Hello everyone, and welcome to this pre-town meeting presentation on the fiscal year 2021-2022 municipal budget. I'm Tom Hubbard, Deputy City Manager, and I want to thank you for your interest in learning more about the budget. And I'll take you through a series of slides over the next 15 minutes or so that will help you better understand what is and what is not included in the budget and the impact that it means to you as a taxpayer. Let me begin by sharing with you that this has been the most challenging budget our management team and the City Council has worked on in my 9 years of presenting the annual budget plan. These are difficult times for everyone, and this certainly is reflected in what this budget calls for. We're bringing forth a budget to the voters that has compromises, sacrifices, and in some departments, reduced staffing and reduced services. We're responding in a way that we believe to be fiscally prudent and responsible as we continue to move through this pandemic. So let's begin the slides with looking at some of the major considerations from management and council. Certainly sensitivity toward any tax rate increase, especially with the challenges of the pandemic, as I mentioned. Maintaining our current level of service, I say where possible. For the first time this year, we're actually not able to maintain that same level of service that we've had with every department across departments in this fiscal year budget. Meet all our contractual and bonded debt obligations. Support for the capital improvement plan. And when I say support, I don't mean full funding. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then fund our annual assessments and support to other entities. I have a separate slide on that I'll show you. And of course, the continued support for council initiatives. So let's look at the numbers. We have a lot of different numbers up here. Let's go into a little bit about what they mean. We'll start down here with the general fund. The total for all of our funds this year is $50.7 million. Well, let me tell you what that's made up of. First off, it's made up of the general fund expenditures, $26.7 million. Secondly, it's made up of all of our enterprise funds, the water, the sewer, and the stormwater funds, about $14 million worth of expenses there. And then finally, there's about $10 million of special funds money. These are things like city center funds, penny for pass funds, open space funding, and other reserve funding that is held in a separate fund outside the general fund. So our general fund expenditures, $26.7 million, and our general fund revenues at $9.3 million. If you subtract the revenue from the expenditures, it gives you the $17.3 million number, almost $17.4 million. That is actually the tax levy. That is the amount of money that the tax rate is based on. The increase in our expenses this year is just under $146,000. The tax rate increase is just under 1% at 0.98, and this is just a little over a half-cent increase over last year's approved budget tax rate. And this is the decimal equivalent of 5597. What does that mean for you as a taxpayer? If we take into account the next fiscal year, which begins on July 1st of 2021 and ends on June 30th, 2022, that's our fiscal year 22. The proposed budget, as I said, just a little under a 1% increase for the average condo owner. This is a number that we have from our city assessor. That would be the $13.01 annual increase, or $1.08 a month increase in taxes. And for a primary residence, at the average home value, that would be $18.76 as an annual increase. And Martha, could you go back? And just over, just $1.56 a month for a primary residence. Okay. I want to talk just a bit about, I know this is hard to read, but it's a snapshot of our capital improvement plan, and this is a summary of funds that are in the general fund. And a lot of what that's made up of are things that cost more significant amounts of money, like paving, tree care, fleet replacement, the police computerization and electronics over at 19 Gregory Drive, some park improvements, and fire rescue equipment. As we look at where we were going to take some reductions from, the capital improvement plan was one of the areas that we first looked at because it's the most significant in terms of amounts of money. So in the end, we finished up the capital improvement plan $400,000 under the approved level for this current fiscal year. Some of the cutbacks that we had to make included fleet requests in several departments. These would be trucks in the Department of Public Works and police cruisers in the police department. We moved some items to out years. We had a request this year from the fire department for a new ambulance. That's been bumped out another year or so. A reduction in paving. We started with the hope that we could fund $1 million worth of paving. We actually have $700,000 appropriated in the approved budget from the council for that line item. And a reduction in the dollars for tree removal and replacement. This is for the ash trees and the problem with the emerald ash borer. Just trying to get ahead of that issue. We had $100,000 originally in the budget. We ended up at $50,000 for that item. We also worked very diligently with all of our department managers, looking through all the various line items within the general fund to help balance out the revenues and the expenses. We had to make some cuts to our reserve funds, and stabilizations money was removed from this year's budget. And we also had some unfunded staff positions that we have a separate slide for. So when we look at reduced staffing, we've already eliminated one position in FY21, and that position will not come back in FY22. But these are additional non-funded positions for staffing in FY22, and they include one police officer, one firefighter EMT, our city planner position, the deputy finance officer position, a parks laborer, and an HR assistant. In addition to that, we've taken 4 positions and actually moving them into 2 positions. The administrative assistant for both police and fire will now be a shared position. They were 2 separate positions. And the second area of merging is with tax collection and tax assessing. Todd LeBlanc is our tax assessor. He'll be retiring this year, and we're looking to merge those 2 positions as well. So as we look at, we talked a little bit about some of the expenses and what they entail. Let's look at some of the ways we're actually trying to save money so that we don't have to ask for quite as much. So as we look at some of these initiatives, the energy projects is funding for efficiency projects by utilizing proceeds from the solar landfill to provide more savings. When we talk about grants, we're looking at digitization of records, multiple stormwater projects, our Class 2 paving grant, and a partnership which we have with regional planning. In terms of stewardship, we're continuing to take care of our facilities, preventative maintenance, and improvements. In the pension, we've closed out entry into the South Burlington Pension Program. All new employees now go into the VEMR's program. The South Burlington Pension Plan is 100% funded based on present value, and currently 90% funded based on the GASB requirements for entry age normal. So the pension program remains to be in good shape. In terms of health insurance alternatives, we've switched from Cigna as our healthcare provider, who originally quoted a 12% increase in health insurance for this year, and we've joined a captive insurance. Joining with other like partners in a self-insured pool, this increased our health insurance this year by 5%. This alone was a savings of $168,000. We've also opened up a shared clinic with partners offering services to employees to save additional costs on insurance and treatment and promoting healthier lifestyles. We continue to work on lean process for streamlining operations and program management. This includes things such as payroll, AP, the digitization of our documents and records, and these are all recent examples of some of these efforts. When we look at shared services, we have a community outreach program of mental health counselors through Howard Mental Health. That's a shared network of counselors that respond with our police department, with our fire department, to crisis situations to help de-escalate the situation. There's a number of communities, our neighboring communities, that are involved in this partnership with us. We have shared services with the town of Shelburne, where we provide some stormwater services for them. And we also share some unique types of equipment that really doesn't make sense for any one community to own. So if there's something that the city of Burlington has that we might have use for a couple days here and there, and something that we have that they might have use for, or the town of Colchester or Essex, this is a partnership amongst our department managers that we try to work out that kind of a symbiotic sharing of equipment. Regionalization is happening on a couple different fronts. We continue with mutual aid of our public safety services and the move to a regional dispatch system proposed for FY22. Our regional managers have identified multiple services that could be considered appropriate for regionalized efforts, and we'll be meeting with elected officials this spring to explore further opportunities. And then finally, when we talk about sustainability, we continue to evaluate ways to make things more affordable, efficient, and better for our community, environment, and climate. So here's a look at some of the energy projects that we're looking at. These are some of the things going on the current fiscal year, some of the things that are proposed for the next year. So some pretty significant numbers, and we did some significant projects last year as well. As we flip to the next screen, you'll see, where is our energy distribution around the city? You can see this big factor here, $435,000 worth of that energy distribution just in sewer alone. Streets and highways is another big portion, and then we get into what are some of our major facilities, the 575 Dorset Street, the 19 Gregory Drive, all significant producers of energy as well. So let's identify some of these expense factors that we talked just a little bit about. The projects in the capital improvement plan that are remaining in the plan still total about $2.5 million. Our health insurance and pension increases I spoke to, we get a 5% increase here, holding the line on the pension. The agreements, we have agreements with 3 of our collective bargaining units. Our workers' comp, our property and liability insurance had some increases. There was a reduction on interest earnings. As with most of you that have savings accounts and investments accounts, you probably found that especially the amount of interest that you're earning in a checking account for us has gone from a 2% factor to a 0.25% factor. That's significant in the amount of revenue that we bring in and with the amount of money that we have in these checking accounts. There was an increase in funding needed for the opening of the new public library, both in terms of equipment and for staffing. And then very significantly, we're projecting a significant reduction in the amount of local options tax that we're projecting to generate for fiscal year 22. We've taken out $250,000 of what was there projected for this year. So again, that's almost like an expense that we have to make up what that cost is. We hope that eventually the local options tax will resume back to its normal levels. That provides about $4 million worth of revenue for us on a yearly basis. The funding assessments that I alluded to earlier, these are entities like the Winooski Valley Park District, Front Porch Forum, CCTV, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, Regional Planning, County Court, and Green Mountain Transit, some of the other assessments that we have. As you can see, GMT is the largest of all our assessments. Of the $836,000, GMT is $519,000 of that cost. And then just a quick look at the analysis a little bit of some of the expenses. We can look at HR benefits here, just under 20% for benefits and administration. If you added in salaries and benefits, we're 58, 59% of total budget for both of those. Second big factor for us is the police department, the 19 Gregory Drive facility, and our largest department with employees, and then highway and fire kind of being a tie for the third in terms of the expenses per departments. As we look at the revenue, we're still projecting a grand list growth of 1%. We have increased revenues from ambulance fees and the city clerk recording fees. We now own the building at 19 Gregory Drive. That's where the police station is housed. There are 2 tenants there that we receive income from that will help us offset some of the expenses for that building. And we're retiring some debt on the Public Works building. That alone's about $100,000 for principal and interest. We're going to continue to use our special funds, our grant money, our impact fees, and the allocation from the approved bonding that the voters have supported for the open space projects, the communications equipment, and the Penny for Pass initiatives that were passed several years ago. The revenue sources by far, property tax stands out 65% here. And then you'll see our local options tax, just a little over 14% of our total revenue. And then we have the ambulance service billing comes in to help offset some of the costs of that service. That's about $750,000. Here's a list of all the city services that the tax money supports and provides for. The enterprise funds is based on user fees. Those are separate bills you get for water and sewer. And water, sewer, and stormwater are our 3 entities in our enterprise funds. And if we look at our utility rates for next year, the proposed increase with our partner at Champlain Water District, just under $8 a year. The stormwater's holding steady at $1.44, and the sewer has decreased from last year down to $5.17. A total of $14.50 for the year, $1.21 a month for the 3 separate enterprise funds. That's one of the lowest increases that we've had in recent years. And let's look at the tax rate history here. Here's a graph that shows the past 10 years in terms of how much the tax rate has increased. As you can see, this is just over the ½ cent that's projected for 2021-22, at the lowest of the last 10 years in terms of what's been asked for. The average just about $1.75 cents. The summary of impacts, again, as we look at the budget, are just a reminder in terms of what it would cost based on the average condominium, the average home in South Burlington for the year and per month. You see the factors up there. Few different items on the city ballot. We have our elected positions. 2 city council positions are open for this year, and our city clerk is up for re-election as well. Article 2 is the budget. That's what we're talking about here today. And Article 3 is a vote on the TIF. This is for construction of portions of Garden Street in the city center. We'll also be doing a separate video presentation on the TIF vote to help you better understand what that is all about. In terms of voting, several different options are available for this year. All ballots will be mailed to active voters around February 10th. Early voting can be done by either mailing the ballot back into the city clerk's office by the due date of March 2nd, or you can drop off the ballot at City Hall at the main entrance. There's a slot, a drop slot, that you can put the ballot into. That goes into a locked container that the city clerk has access to, and will empty those on a frequent basis as we expect many votes to come in early. And then you can always continue to vote on town meeting day and hope that you will. And the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 2nd, at these locations. There's 2 districts at the middle school. And just a reminder that if you are going to vote on town meeting day, you should bring your ballot with you to the polls. So if you're not going to vote early, you should still bring in your ballot. Additional information can be found on our website. We'll be producing our annual budget booklet that has the school full budget and the city full budget contained within it. If you'd like to be mailed a copy of that, please call the city manager's office, 846-4107. Leave your name and your address and the fact that you'd like to be mailed a budget booklet. We'll make sure that you get one. The booklets will also be available on our website, on the school's website, at the city clerk's office, and at the public library. And for any questions regarding voting, please reach out to the city clerk's office. And anything in regard to the budget, feel free to contact us at the city manager's office or our finance office at 846-4107. I hope that you found this informational. We look forward to your participation in the budget process and in the voting process for this year. And thank you for taking the time again to join us for this presentation.